Um, so just to introduce again tonight's meeting, um, we're going to be hearing from Hannah Schafer about her experiences with the Global Sumud Flotilla, which, as I'm sure people will know who are on the call tonight, was an inspiring example of international solidarity with Palestinians besieged in Gaza. It's a truly international effort involving people from many different countries. We're going to start with an overview of Hannah's experiences, and I'll be asking Hannah some questions about how she came to be involved, and then we'll open up for discussion and contributions from the audience. And it's great to see so many people on the call tonight. So the first question for Hannah really is, can you tell us a bit more about where did the idea for the flotilla come from, and how did you personally get involved in the flotilla?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. Um, well, like, I'm not an expert on the history of the flotilla, but it has been going for a long time. So, I think the idea came when Israel first blockaded Gaza. Certainly, boats have been trying to break the siege, since, as far as I'm aware, like for the best part of 20 years, since kind of 2007, 2008. I think with the first boats, but I'm not 100% certain. But the 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 flotilla itself, that I was on, um came out of I think the March. Well, the first boat I was aware of was the Madeleine in the summer, earlier on this summer, and then the Hamdallah um went soon afterwards, and both those boats were intercepted well before they got to Gaza. And then there was the global march to Rafah, and that's when I first got involved, because I went to a talk like this, in fact, with somebody who'd been on that march, who I knew. There was a couple of women that I knew who'd been on that march, who did a Zoom talk to kind of share their experiences. So so it was after that I saw a link, asking for people to get involved with the flotilla. So, as I'm a sailor, I filled out a form, as you do, and didn't hear anything for ages, and then I wasn't aware of when it was supposed to be going, the flotilla, but I kind of figured they'd have to go, as we got into August. I kind of figured they'd have to go soon, or the weather would turn. So eventually I heard back from somebody, and I went to an interview in the middle of August, and then like 10 days later I was on a flight to Barcelona to join the preparations there. So it was all a bit kind of last minute, yeah, but we got it together in the end.
So, as you mentioned, you joined the flotilla in Barcelona. Now, as people may well be aware, in the Spanish state, there's been a massive movement in solidarity with the Palestinian people, and I understand that the send off from Barcelona was quite something in terms of the levels of kind of popular mobilization and support as the flotilla was leaving. I mean, could you perhaps say something about how the flotilla was more than about just the flotilla itself? It also linked up with people organizing across their communities and trade unions. And then perhaps you could talk us through a bit about what happened once you'd left Barcelona, where you went next, and what happened.
Yeah, cool. Well, Barcelona itself was quite an experience. So I was actually there for a week, for a week before we left, and there was a bunch of boats tied up on a dock, which the dock workers, I think, had arranged for us to use this piece of dock, and then we had to try and keep the on the land bit clear so they wouldn't get into trouble. But just the logistics of trying to get like about 20 odd boats ready to sail, and then provisioned, and get all the people sailing on them trained, and keep the whole thing secure as well, you know, because kind of word got out that we were there. So there was massive input from the community in Barcelona, um, helping us out. And as the days progressed, and you know, the enormity of the task became clearer and clearer, like just getting enough water on board for all the people was massive. Like we had this lorries coming, and then there was you know, trying to get fueled up, trying to get everyone fueled up when the nearest fuel dock was quite a long way away, was complicated. So just the logistics to get all the boats together was amazing, and quite last minute it felt like, but people just materialized to help out, and stepped up, and finally we got away. So there was a massive send off from Barcelona on the Sunday at the end of September, and it was really nice. Our boats, we kind of left the dock that where we'd been. We left the dock where we'd been prepping the boats, and we sailed round to like a big quayside in the middle of town, and there was like there'd been a massive like rally there for 2 days, in fact, because we went there the day before as well. And so there was you know, like music and events, and speakers, and activities, and um like thousands and thousands of people. And it was great because we tied up on the port side, and there was a Catalan banner, so it was in the Catalan colours, and they told me it said "You never walk alone," which made me feel really, really at home, because that's like Liverpool FC's slogan. Like, so that felt like really special, and a proper good omen for the trip. Like, also while we were tied up there, interestingly, this old guy came up, and he recognized our boat, and he was telling us how we'd worked on our boat like 20 years earlier in the Canary Islands, and like it wasn't his boat, but the owner of the boat had like paid him to do it up. And you could tell he really loved the boat, and he was really pleased that it was going on the flotilla. And you know, you could kind of feel his spirit in the boat, you know, the love that he put into it. And it was a beautiful boat. It was, yeah, it was in really good nick compared to some of them. So yeah, we set off from Barcelona in a massive thunderstorm. So we left just before it got dark, and we set off in this. There was a massive thunderstorm, and it was quite rough, and there was lots of thunder and lightning. I've never really sailed through thunder and lightning before, so that was quite exciting. I think I think the people on the boat, like there was half of us were sailors, and the other half like had never been on a boat before really. And we were on like it was quite a big boat for me, but I guess people who aren't used to sailing probably thought it was quite small, because it was like 48 foot, and it was really rough, and yeah, there was thunder and lightning and loads of wind and loads of waves, and people were being quite sick. But I actually quite enjoyed it, and um quite a few boats got battered, so a few of them had to go back to port, and we the rest of the flotilla carried on to Menorca, and we anchored up in Menorca for a couple of nights, while one or two boats like fixed what needed fixing in Menorca, and the boats that went back to Barcelona sort of left to try and catch us up. So that was the first of several stops that we made for repairs, technical stops we called them. And and we kind of got used to waiting. Um, like it was quite frustrating for those of us who well, all the boats, you can always use a bit of time. There's always things to fix on a boat or things to do, like when you're at anchor rather than bouncing around on the sea. So but still, it kind of when we're all geared up to go into Gaza, um it was kind of frustrating. But after a couple of nights in Menorca, on anchor, we set off. Then we set sail for Tunisia, and yeah, then when we got to Tunisia, we were meeting up with the Tunisian fleet. So it became apparent that the Tunisian fleet had quite a lot of technical issues while we were there. So we ended up being in Tunisia for quite a long time. So we once again got used to waiting, and some people realised that we were a bit behind time. Um, so there was a bit of movement on some of the boats as well, in terms of people joining and people leaving. But what it did do was give us an opportunity to meet the people in Tunisia. So I spent a couple of nights in Tunis, and I was really impressed by just the friendliness of everyone, and the how many people knew about the flotilla, and how many people just spontaneously come up to you on the street and thanked us for being there. And yeah, it was quite amazing, really, to feel that the love and the solidarity. And
Yeah, it
also,
doesn't it it
go
it
on.
sorry, it doesn't surprise me about Tunisia, because there is a very long tradition of Palestine solidarity among Tunisian activists, from going back decades, in terms of Tunisian trade unions and Palestine organizing. And Tunisia was one of the places that had a popular uprising, a revolution in 2011. It actually sparked the whole wave of revolutions around the region. And when I was researching for a book on the Tunisian revolution, it was one of the things that came across from activists there was that actually the question of Palestine, they saw that as part of their own struggles. They saw that the solidarity with the Palestinian people fed into their struggle against dictatorship. And so it's great to see that carries on from your experience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the other thing that happened when we were in Tunisia was two of our boats, like 2 nights running, our lead boats were firebombed. So they were firebombed in a kind of a way that was calculated to not do people any damage, but maybe to instill fear in people in the fleet. And it had a double-edged effect, I think. So some of us became more determined to carry on, and a few people did pull out, partly as a reason, partly I think realizing that we weren't just on a jolly up the med. Do you know what I mean? Because it kind of brings it home to you when people are having to put fires out on boats. But during that time, like the Israelis were issuing threats about calling us terrorists and saying they were going to blow us out the water, and also saying that we were going to be arrested and held as terrorists, and not deported, um, as previous flotilla members had been on the last. It is important to remember as well. There was a boat that went from Turkey to try and break the siege, and the Israelis boarded it, like, with armed soldiers, and actually killed 10 people on that boat. I think that was in 2010. So the threats weren't entirely empty. But I think at that point, the solidarity movements that were going on around the world were starting to take effect, and like really firebombing our boats was kind of counterproductive, I think, and just sort of made that solidarity movement more vocal.
Yeah, I would like to bring in the experience that the flotilla kind of triggered in Italy at this point. And I don't know, we have a small video that we wanted to share with people if it's possible to play in the background. So you can see here, this is the moment, this is from when the flotilla, some parts of the flotilla left from Genoa. Thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of people came down, being interviewed by the Italian TV here, to see off the flotilla. You can see the scale of it. One of the Genoa dock workers was in fact traveling on the flotilla, and there have been actions by dock workers to blockade the ports, and during the time that the flotilla was sailing. And in fact, the flotilla was this mounting threat to the flotilla, and the rhetoric from the Israelis they were going to attack the flotilla actually triggered the Italian unions to say that they were going to call a general strike if the flotilla was intercepted, and that is in fact what happened. So that the flotilla became a kind of lightning rod for a much bigger movement. I mean, I've spoken to colleagues from Italy about the scale of this, and Genoa is not that big a town. This is something like 40-50,000 people marching down to the port to see off the flotilla. I mean, how did you know about this level of solidarity, Hannah, when you were on the flotilla, or were you quite isolated from the scale of the media story that was developing around it?
No, in fact, I was like had a kind of a hotline to hearing about it, because Lorenzo, who's one of the participants on my boat, is an Italian journalist. Like he lives in Barcelona, but he was writing for the Italian media, and he was very much in demand for TV appearances and interviews and what have you. He was working really hard. Him, and we had another journalist on the boat, like a filmmaker from Mexico, Carlos. And they were both working really hard all the way through. But yeah, Lorenzo was great in terms of keeping us up to date with events in Italy particularly. So once we left Tunisia, we actually got stuck in Tunisia. So we left Port Sidi Bou Said, where we were anchored after the second firebomb. The Tunisian government got us to move to Bizerte, because they said that they could make us more secure there. And also Sidi Bou Said was right near the presidential palace and things. So the Israeli were really playing with fire, bombing us on Tunisian territory. So we moved up to Bizerte, and then we had a bit of an issue with checking out with our passports, which took like about 24 to 36 hours longer than we were expecting. So the poor old Italians got waved off from Genoa, and then they were waiting for us to arrive for a couple of days. So by the time we got there to Italy, they were itching. They were itching to get set off, and we kind of got used to waiting. So eventually we had a couple of nights on anchor in Italy, and then we set off for Crete. And then it was on the way to Crete we got bombed again. Like quite it was quite a night, the night that we got attacked just before we got to Crete, with lots of like fire bombs that were going off mid-air. They seemed to be targeting the sails, like to try and blow some of our sails up. So somebody lost a mast, and somebody else like had their sail, like a big hole blown in their sail. and then there were a couple of boats as well that had some nasty chemicals dropped on them.
Is this from
So after that, it was, yeah, go on.
drones or what?
From
How?
drones, yeah, I think they were from drones. So after that, we had quite a lot of discussions about what the best way to proceed was. And the Italians, that was after that the Italian government said they were going to send a frigate. They had a warship around the other side of Crete. They were going to send that, and then the Spanish said they were going to send one as well. So we actually then anchored. We had one or two boats as well that had issues. It was I think it was when we got to Crete that our lead boat family was sabotaged and had to pull out. So we had a new lead boat, Alma, who'd also had to do emergency repairs to be able to carry on. So we had various issues with one thing and another, but we finally left Crete and then set off on our final leg down towards Gaza, which felt really good. Yeah.
So
To be
before we get on to what happened, in the last stages of the voyage, could you say a bit more about the kind of how the flotilla brought together people from different countries? And you mentioned a little bit about the crew on your boat, but how many different nationalities were involved, and how did people, what kinds of people were involved in the flotilla, what jobs did they do, and
yeah,
so on.
yeah. So it was kind of organized like they were captains and crew were kind of one set of people, and so they were the ones who had actually knew about sailing, really, the captains and crew. So I was a first officer on my boat. Um, um, so we were all from all over the place. And then each boat was being looked after by a different delegation. So I was lucky enough to be on a boat that was being looked after by the Colombian delegation. So we had an organizer on the boat who was kind of above the captain in the organizational structure. And she was from Colombia. And then so each boat was being organized by a different national delegation. Which was great. So there was more than 40 boats, but there was more than 40 nationalities as well. So I'm sure some of the boats must have been, some delegations of the larger delegations must have been looking after more than one boat. But there was people there was nearly 500 people on the flotilla. So there must have been like way over 500, because people did swap rounds. Some people left and new people came. So we had boats joined us. So we set off from Barcelona. Then we had boats from Italy joined us. Boats from Greece joined us. There was even a boat came up from Libya to join us. I think there might have been a couple of boats from Turkey as well came over to join us. So as well as the Tunisian boats, obviously. But there was over 40 nationalities. I think there was nearly 50 different nationalities there as well. So
There were others from Britain as well? I mean, I know of
yeah,
other
yeah.
people who were involved.
So yeah, I didn't know all the UK delegation people, but yeah, most of them I've met. If I hadn't met them before then, so obviously I knew the people who joined us in Barcelona, but the people on the Italian boats and the Greek boats I didn't know so well. So yeah, but there was I think there was about a dozen people from the UK.
Yeah.
Ireland had quite a big delegation, and Spain had quite a big delegation, and Malaysia, the Malaysian delegation, we had a couple of Malaysian pop stars joined us for the last couple of days. Yeah.
So were you worried, though, that the attention on the flotilla might actually take away attention from what was happening in Gaza? How did you deal with, with that, of making sure that the focus was going to be on what was happening in
Yeah.
Palestine? and the
Yeah.
siege.
Yeah, so I think the message all the way through was that we weren't there to be heroes. We were there to open a humanitarian aid corridor to Gaza, and that anything that happened to us was nothing compared to what was going on in Gaza, and that is absolutely still the case now, unfortunately. And that you know whenever any of us had an opportunity for an interview or for press articles or anything, is always to bring the story back to what's happening in Gaza and why we're there, and the failure of our governments, to provide humanitarian aid, and the to do anything to stop the ongoing genocide.
And can you tell us then what happened when you were finally intercepted by the Israelis? What happened to you at that moment, and then when you were detained?
Yeah. So yeah, the general consensus was that once we got within 150 miles of Gaza, there was a chance that we'd be intercepted. I think that's maybe the furthest out that anybody had been in the past, from past attempts to sail to Gaza. So some legal observer boats, and we also had an Italian like a hospital ship, a safety ship that normally helps out refugees in refugee boats in the Mediterranean. They accompanied us to like 150 miles out. So on that night there were some Israeli gunboats around, but the weather was quite it was quite windy and there was quite a big swell. So nobody got intercepted that first night. And then the second night, as it got dark, we were like a day's sail from Gaza. We was like we'd have been there in the following morning. So we were getting really like quite excited at the thought of actually making it. But we also knew that it was gonna that we were going to be intercepted that night. So as soon as it got dark, the Israeli gunboats came and surrounded. First, they surrounded all the big boats. So we had like a list. So our lead boats, the Alma and Sirius was another. So we had a list of 6 boats. So as they were being picked off, they would take over. But the Israelis obviously had the same list, because they took out all 6 boats straight away, and including, like, there was a couple of sailing boats on that list, and they drove through the flotilla, through the group of sailing boats, just picking out the ones that they were looking for. And the rest of us got to carry on for a few more hours. And then they started spraying boats with water cannons, and they would turn all their lights off on the gunships and like drive really fast past us and try and like swamp us with their wakes, and yeah, just general intimidation tactics. Then they had a big massive ship as well that they drove across the front of the fleet. So we kind of just tried to maintain our course and speed. That was our kind of plan. And yeah, I've done quite a lot of slow marching with Just Stop Oil, and I wasn't expecting it, but it actually felt really like being on a slow march, with like people trying to like rip the banner off you, and trying to maintain your trying to maintain your non-violent container, while people like are being really violent all around you. But yeah, eventually, in two ribs full of soldiers came and came alongside us, one each side, and I think it was just 4 soldiers. It felt like more, but I think there was only 4, because that's how many ended up with us the whole way. So 4 soldiers came on board, and you could see the little green laser sights from their rifles on us, like, and they smashed our camera and they smashed our Starlink, and then they got us to sail backwards and forwards while they searched us all, and then they searched the whole boat, and then they got us to sail to drive to Ashdod port, which took forever. It took about 12 hours probably to drive to Ashdod. Yeah, so that was kind of a bit of an endurance thing. But
And then you were detained. What was the experience like of being
yeah,
in
um,
detention?
you know, like after the soldiers had smashed everything up, like we'd been led to believe that the soldiers were going to be pretty bad, but once they'd smashed everything up and searched the boat and everything, they actually they settled down, and um they went too abusive, really. um But when we got to Ashdod Port, I could see before we got taken off our boat, we were driving up and down for quite a while before we came alongside, and you could see everybody out on the on the on the quayside, like kneeling with their hands tied behind their backs and their heads down in the sun. Um, um, so like I was quite lucky because we must have been some of the last people off, so we went straight from the boat into the port building. So we're spared that particular um difficulty, because it's not very like being made to kneel in the sun with your hands like zip tied behind your back. But yeah, we were strip searched, and loads of our stuff was stolen and chucked in the bin, and um then eventually we were taken off to prison. So like, because I'm an older woman, I mean, you could tell the hierarchy of the soldiers, when they searched us. First they searched all the guys, um then they searched the women, but they did me last. Like they do it in kind of whoever they thought was the biggest threat, or whoever they disliked the least, and then they'd be really rough with some people, like with anybody dark skinned, or anybody like I heard that quite a lot of the women had the hijabs um ripped off them. um but actually, apart from like quite a lot of verbal abuse, I didn't really, they weren't that horrible to me, um because I think I'm like a white woman with a British passport, and I'm a bit older, so they actually yeah, you know they they threw all my stuff in the bin. They threw all my meds. Like I was lucky because I'm not on any regular meds. So people who had regular medication, who'd taken them with them. There was a couple of guys I heard about who were on insulin, and they got, they wouldn't give them an insulin, but they did just throw everyone's meds in the bin, and then however much people complained to their consulates, the medical attention and the medication just didn't happen at all. So I think that was probably the hardest thing for people. And we didn't have any access to clean water, so we were drinking the tap water, which I think the first cell I was being held in wasn't too bad, but the second cell I was held in was definitely, the water was dodgy, because I had the dodgy stomach for about a week afterwards. Um, after being there, and like the food was non-existent, and then when it did arrive, it was pretty basic. But I think compared to how Palestinian prisoners are, are treated, then then we got away with murder, really. Because it was great, because there was about 140 women, all all kept on one landing. So we were all kept on this one landing in about 10 different cells. So there's like 14 women in my cell, and you know, we're all like kind of hardcore activists from all around the world. So so there was a lot of protesting, there was a lot of chanting, there was a lot of singing, there was a lot of writing on the walls. And you know, the guards would come, and they'd come and they'd shout a lot, and they'd, you know, they'd point their guns at you and whatever. But mostly I think they were under strict orders not to be too brutal with us. So there was a lot of posturing, but personally, I found it a really enriching and empowering experience, just being in the company of such amazing women, and having time to sit and talk, you know. And yeah.
And so just finally, then you were deported back home. What have people been doing after coming out from detention? Are there examples of how activists who've been involved with the flotilla have been speaking out or being involved in other campaigns? What's been the next steps for people who've been involved?
Yeah. So coming home, it was quite interesting coming home. So we went from the being held and in the prison and being shouted at and just like abused and that, and then we went to Jordan, where we were welcomed. Like, the people in the hotel had lined up, the staff in the hotel lined up and gave us all a flower when we come in, a flower each, and it was lovely. And there was another bunch of people in Jordan had arranged medical checks and clothes and all kinds. And then our consulate, the British consulate, washed their hands of us. And the flotilla, luckily the UK delegation arranged for us to be flown home from Jordan, where then we were stopped by Border Force and held up by Border Force and Special Branch for 2 hours, after being fast tracked by the Jordanian security at their airport. We then got slow tracked when we got back to the UK. And that kind of, to me, illustrates, you know, where our government is in cahoots with Israel. So I think certainly personally, I've done a few talks now. I've spoken at a couple of marches. I'm doing a talk in Cardigan next weekend to my local XR group. And there was a big rally, where I think in Birmingham. Well, I don't know if a rally is the right word, but there was a big demonstration against the UK government's involvement with Israel. I think Shabna Mahmood has a surgery in Birmingham, and I think a lot of people from the flotilla, delegates, went to that. I wasn't able to go because I had a speaking appointment in Swansea that weekend. So yeah, I think a lot of us have just been trying to do what we can, really, to carry on raising awareness of what's happening in Gaza, because obviously there's a bit of a sham ceasefire, which I think is a result of, partly at least, of the amount of the amount of support that they generated for Gaza, vocal and on the street support for Gaza.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Hannah. I think it would be great if we opened up now to see if there are any direct questions that people would like to ask. So if
just before before we
sure.
go on to that, I'd just like to ask, there is, you know, there are a few ways that, yeah, there we go. Bells is just putting some stuff in the chat now, about ways, you know, for anyone who has to leave early and doesn't want to stay for the discussion. There's a few things just going in the chat now. Like one of the things for me, one of the big things for me about going on the flotilla, like I've done a lot of direct action in the climate movement and in the past for the peace movement and the anti-apartheid movement and anti-deportation campaigns and things. But you know, it was so lovely to be able to to sail on a flotilla to try and do something. It was such a positive thing we were trying to do to open up the humanitarian aid corridor. But mostly for me, it's about as well trying to inspire people, because it was ordinary people who organised that flotilla. It wasn't government, you know. Government should have been stepping up and stopping Israel from from behaving so badly, from yeah, committing genocide against the Palestinian people. But 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 you know, there are things that people can do. So not everybody can give up the time or the or has the skills or whatever to be able to sail across the Mediterranean. But you know, there was a lot of people who were working in the UK to support us as well, and around the world. You know, there was a lot of ordinary people around the world doing stuff to try and support us. So you know, everyone, I believe everyone's got a niche. Do you know what I mean? So the best way to do support work is to find something that you enjoy, and then get stuck in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Sorry, Anne.
So, well, we have a couple of questions in the chat. There's one from Safi who says, "Did you see any humanity in any of the soldiers? Did any of them seem affected by what they were doing?" And then another question: "What humanitarian support were you carrying on your boat and on the flotilla? Did the Israeli Navy throw it overboard and deny its existence?"
So as far as the soldiers went, the soldiers on who actually came on our boat, once they'd finished kicking things to bits, they actually calmed down. Bless him, one of them was really seasick, and then they all went to sleep, and just like left one of them kind of keeping an eye on us. And then there was one guy, after they switched over, he went downstairs and he threw loads of cushions up. So we had like a bit of a softer experience in the cockpit, which I thought was nice. But mostly my experience of the Israelis, certainly when we got to Israel, was they seemed very angry and very hard and very closed-minded, and yeah, like just really not happy. But they were, I know we had this discussion in our cell a couple of times. Like there was a few Palestinian guards, you know, like Palestinian Arab guards, and you know, some of the Arabic speakers amongst us talk to them. And then there's one or two of them were just really closed, like the Israelis, and one or two of them were trying to be like, if they could like get you stuff like sanitary products or whatever, you know, they would try and help. A bit like my experience at British prison, where, you know, only I would say in a British prison most people are just doing their jobs, whereas in the Israeli prison, like, they were quite nasty and violent, most of them, which yeah, whereas there was one or two of them who who were obviously struggling with that. And yeah, we had quite a lot of food aid on board, and we had some medical supplies as well, like masks and gowns and gloves and stuff. And I don't know what happened to it. You know, it was down below. We had it in one of the yeah, like in a room down below in the boat. And yeah, I didn't see the Israelis offloaded us and drove off in our boat, the soldiers. So I don't know what they'd have done with the aid at all.
Um, Thanks. So there's another few questions have come in. So what happened to your boats after?
Yeah.
And then there was a question earlier around, is there a way to be involved with organising if there's got involved if there's a future flotilla? Um, you know, how could people get involved if there's going to be another flotilla in future?
Um. Yeah. So uh, yeah, the future. There is, as far as I know, there is a plan to do another flotilla probably in the spring. I know the Thousand Madeleines, who are also organising a different organisation, but also organising flotillas. We're talking about sending some boats like in November, but I don't think the Global Sumud Flotilla will go again till the spring because of the weather issues. Um, as far as what happened to our boats, um, the Israelis stole them. The Israelis stole them, and I think there will be some legal moves to try and get them back. You know, they stole our boats, they stole the contents of our boats, they stole a lot of stuff off people. Funnily enough, one of the guys this crazy German guy, he had some little headphones, and he's got a tracker on them, and they're actually in an army base in Israel somewhere now. So he knows where his little who's somebody's robbed his AirPods, and they're in an army base somewhere in Israel. But yeah, I think they're still trying to get the handler back. So I don't know, like how long it might take, but I think they are still trying to get. And then some of the boats didn't make it the whole way, so they're getting fixed up to go on the next flotilla. Um, yeah.
Thanks. So there's another few questions. So there was the global march to Gaza that happened before the flotilla and had perhaps more publicity. So do you think that they learned from organising the march before the flotilla happened? And then another question: how long were you held in Israel, and were some of you kept longer than others?
Um, yeah, I think the global march to Gaza, I think from what I heard of the talk that I went to that kind of got me onto the flotilla in the first place, that was also, like a massive undertaking, and organization could have been better, but you only learn through doing. Sometimes it's like the flotilla. It was such a massive thing, and it was organized at such short notice. It was like impossible. Do you know what I mean? And then like it was only through people self-organizing, so we'd be promised, we'd be asked, can you get a list together of fresh provisions you need when we'd be on an anchorage. And then so you'd send the list through, and then they wouldn't be able to get it together to do it. But then like the organizer on our boat managed to get somebody from the Colombian delegation, spoke to somebody in Greece who got somebody to go, and do you know what I mean? It was like people kind of self-organized and sorted each other out as well. So there was a lot of skill sharing between the boats, and yes, so I imagine the next flotilla will, there's a lot of learning going on at the moment. And I imagine the same thing will be the next time the land, there's another land action, which hopefully, I think they're trying to organise a land action over the winter, so we don't have to wait till spring to try and break the siege again. So yeah,
And
I think if you want to get involved in any of those, then it's best to go to the Global Flotilla website and yeah, take it from there.
um, so do you have any suggestions for helping roles if somebody was saying a question? I wish I could join the flotilla, but I think people need to be quite fit. So are there suggestions for things that you could do if you can't join the flotilla?
Yeah, yeah. So I think to be honest with you, I think in my the impression I've got from the UK delegation is that they desperately need, need people to help with organisation on the land, with the land organisation as well. So there's lots of things that need to be in place in order for the boats to be able to sail in organizational wise. Um so yes, there's lots of roles.
And
um
there's a very a specific question about where did you get the boats from, and what there was a white powder that was dropped on you outside Crete. What was that?
yeah, so I think the powder was phosphorus. I think that was what they thought it was, phosphorus. um which I think is like an incendiary thing, but obvious, yeah. I'm not 100% certain because nobody had a chemical kit to be able to analyze it, and I think the same stuff was dropped on the Madeleine as well. Um, so yeah. Um, as far as the boats go, then I think they came from various sources. Some of them were donated and some of them were bought with donations, with money that people had donated. So yeah, yeah, it was quite interesting. There was one boat in Barcelona, and a guy who had owned it, like, and sold it 5 years earlier, was back on it as crew. Do you know what I mean? So it was nice because he knew his boat really well, so he was well happy with it. But yeah, so they came from all different sources, I think, the boats, and they were still being acquired, like, right up to the last minute kind of thing. So yeah.
Um, uh, what emotions did you go through when you were once you were kidnapped by the Israelis?
Um so it might seem weird, but it was kind of like a bit of a relief because we've been on the boat, apart from 2 days in Tunis, I'd been on the boat like for a month. And yeah, it was kind of a relief that it was over, but mostly it was like immense disappointment that we hadn't quite got to Gaza because we were only about 50 miles off Gaza. We got intercepted about 1 o'clock in the morning, and if we'd have been able to manage another like 8 or 9 hours, we'd have been in Gaza. So that was really disappointing because I had, all the way through, believed that we were gonna make it. And then the biggest disappointment, I think, for me was when we got to Ashdod, and then we got to taken to the prison, was realizing that nobody'd made it, because there was so many of us, there were so many boats. Still, when we were intercepted, there were so many boats still sailing. It was just really disappointing to know that there were a few, like, nobody got through. That was yeah, my most biggest disappointment.
How has the experience changed you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Um, because like, I've only been home, like, I think it's 4 weeks since it was 4 weeks ago today that that I was in Jordan. Do you know what I mean? One thing that I've got from it, so like I actually did not know like a lot about the history of Palestine before I went on this trip. I knew a little bit, do you know what I mean? I knew a little bit, you know, about it being a British colony and the Brits giving it to Israel, you know, after the Second World War, and you know, I knew little bits about the different acts of violence that Israel have put onto the Palestinian people. Um, but I was absolutely blown away by the kindness and hospitality of the Arab people in Tunisia and in Jordan. Do you know what I mean? That was and and I've been told this by people how hospitable the Arab people are, and then but to actually witness it was amazing. It was um beautiful thing to witness. Even even to us bloody Brits. Do you know what I mean? uh, after our history, do you know what I mean? It was yeah. It was,
Would you go
um,
again?
I would absolutely go again. Yeah, yeah. I'm really hoping to be able to go again in the spring. Yeah, yeah. And this time we're going to get there. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing all that. Are there any more questions? Direct questions to Hannah. Um, if
There's still some in the grid.
oh, sorry, I've missed.
It's such luxury having somebody else reading the chat and worrying about all that, I have to say.
So yes, sorry, there were a couple more questions. Are there any more plans for future flotillas? I think
I think I've kind of answered
you
that. Yeah,
partially mentioned that,
yeah,
I think.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. I
and
kind of just while you're having a look, Anne, what one thing that occurred to me today, I was thinking about this coming up, and I was thinking one of the things that like loads of people have said to me since I got back, oh, you're so brave, and you know, I guess in you know, maybe to some people it feels like that, but you know, like I love sailing, and you know, I love taking action. So for me it was a beautiful thing. And you know, until like 18 months ago, I spent quite a few years looking after my mum, who had dementia, and who really struggled with their mood and with their life. And for me, that felt like being brave. You know, stepping up to look after my mum felt like that was brave, because that was really difficult. Whereas, yeah, sailing on the flotilla was like was you know, like a real felt like a privilege and an honor, really. So yeah. Yeah, just wanted to kind of share that, you know, like big up to all those carers out there. Um yeah.
yes, there's another question. Is there a plan to bring seeds with you in the next flotilla for growing food? So the seed bank has saved Palestinian seeds, and have there been any requests from Palestinian people for seeds to grow food?
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. I'll try and make a note of that, and yeah, um do something about it, definitely.
I think I'd just add on that there's actually I mean, one of the things that people in Gaza have been doing is growing their own food when they've been able to.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's very interesting, if you look at this kind of culture of resilience in Gaza, is how much of it has involved people trying to. So, for example, when their buildings are not being pulverized by Israeli bombardment, able to grow using solar power to bring water, and to grow herbs and things on as far as people could. There's a lot of experience of that in Gaza, and including saving seeds and living in a way that is trying to be as sustainable as possible. I'll share some links because I found some very interesting articles about that. There's some there was a couple more questions as well. Did any members of your crew get their sea legs on the flotilla? And also, what happened to the boats? Who will get them back? Because financing this is a very large cost.
Yeah, it was a bit sad, really. Yeah, I have to say, I the last few sea trips I've done, I got quite horribly sick. So I was really pleased this time. I took medication for the first week. I took Dramamine for the first week, and it worked a treat, and I wasn't sick at all. I didn't even feel sick. But all the people who weren't used to being on a boat, so everybody who wasn't part of the crew, and in fact one or two of the crew members as well, were horribly sick for like the first night and for a few days afterwards. And our one of my Colombian shipmates, she was sick for the first like 2 weeks. She was absolutely like wiped out with seasickness for the first 2 weeks, and then she kind of still got sick if it was rough, but she was okay the rest of the time after that. So I guess she probably got the biggest prize for for managing to hang in there, and then learning to function and finding some sea legs, yeah, while she was there. Also, Carlos also got quite badly sick on and off. So he funnily enough, being a documentary filmmaker, he came alive during the bombardment. Do you know what I mean? He loved all the drama. That's what he was there for. So that was quite interesting.
So if somebody is interested, can they register in joining a future flotilla? Can they register then at the website, the Global Sumud Flotilla website?
I'm not sure if they're taking registrations right now. So the way it worked for me was I think I just clicked a link, and then I got an email, and then you have to do like an ID check, and they do an interview, and they do you have to go through a selection procedure. And I know in terms of participants, so there's like one selection procedure. I think it's kind of easier to get on if you've got sailing experience or technical expertise, but there was something like 26,000. Well, I've heard numbers between 26 and 30,000 applicants for the last flotilla, and like 500 or 600 people got on boats. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, check out the website. If there's nothing on it at the moment, then there will be they will be looking for people, so you could always just drop them an email saying you're interested, I think, then.
And sorry, one final question that I think I missed before. So how long were you held in Israel, and were some of you kept longer than others?
Yeah, so yes, people were kept longer than others. So as far as I understood, the procedure was or the procedure that had happened to the previous two boats this year was that people had been offered the chance to sign a form saying they'd entered Israel illegally and they wanted to leave. So they signed the form and they'd get deported straight away. And then everybody else had to go to court to be deported, and there was like a time limit. But there was so many of us this time, I think we broke their system. So some people signed to say they wanted to leave straight away. Basically, we got asked at Ashdod Port, did we want to leave or did we want to stay? So if you wanted to leave, you signed a form, and if you wanted to stay, you didn't sign the form. So I didn't sign the form, but other people did sign the form, and they were still there. Like, I was amongst the last to leave. I think there was about 6 people who were held longer than everybody else, and they got kept an extra few days. I was there. So I arrived at Ashdod on the Thursday, and then I was deported to Jordan on the following Tuesday. So some people got released. I think there was a charter flight. I think so. Who was it? There was a couple of countries, Malaysia and somebody else organised a charter flight for their people, and they flew out to Turkey. So they got out straight away. And then there was a few spare spaces on that, and some of the British people went on that. And then the next day some other people went, and the next day some like half the Spanish delegation went. So people went out in groups, do you know what I mean? But it didn't seem to matter. I think it mattered more what country you were from than whether you'd signed the form or not. So they did come around occasionally and try and get us to sign a form, but I don't think it didn't seem to make that much difference to whether you were going to be on the list to go. And also, like, they never took us to court to deport us; they just deported us in the end. So I don't know, the legalities of that. I have made a statement, and our legal, there is legal actions happening. I think in terms of the lack of consular support, especially when we were being bombed in international waters, and also because we were kidnapped at gunpoint in international waters, and our boat was stolen. So
And
the
the
British
boats,
government haven't done anything about that at all.
and
So
the boats haven't been returned.
no.
So no.
No.
And is anyone still being held by the Israelis?
Not as far as I know. So there was another, the Thousand Madeleine flotilla arrived just as we were leaving. There was another flotilla arrived. So I think there was a little bit of overlap with the 6 people who didn't get deported, who, like I say, seemed to be quite random people. Um, they overlapped, but I think all the people from the Thousand Madeleine flotilla also have been now been also got deported fairly quickly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think we have a little bit of time. So I
Yeah.
wondered if anyone would like to, we could move on and open up a little bit for broader discussion about what next, because we have a situation where there's a so-called ceasefire which Israel is violating daily. Over 100 Palestinians have been killed. We still have a mass movement that's organizing. There are lots of upcoming actions. We've shared a few in the chat of different ways in which people can get involved. So I just thought it would be, we've got about 15 minutes or something before we finish up. If people are happy to stay on the call a little, and anyone would like to open up and make a contribution in the discussion about where the movement can go from here, how we can learn from the experience of the flotilla as inspiring solidarity, and link it up with the different ways people are taking action. So just throw it open and see if anyone is interested, would like to make to share thoughts about that. Yes, BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions, are absolutely crucial. Anyone want to come in on the discussion here?
I mean, one of the things that I think was really effective in Italy was the dock workers, refusing to refusing to let Israeli ships load and unload. You know, if we could, yeah, if we could get something similar to happen here, that would be amazing. But I know, you know, I know in the UK they've worked quite hard to deunionize the dock workers. So, yeah.
Yes, just to highlight, actually, it's already been put in the chat, but I'll just put it in again, is that I was contacted by a colleague from Greece just today about one of the dock workers unions. The leader from one of the unions is being taken to court for an action around stopping. It was actually an Israeli weapons shipment. I've put a link in the chat to an article about that, and there's a couple of email addresses where people can send messages of solidarity. One thing you could do if you're in a trade union, for example, is to raise that with your union, try and get a message of support and so on. Anyone like to Carol, I think.
Sorry, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just obviously very upset with what's still going on in Gaza. I'm just wondering what kind of action can really make a difference, because it didn't seem that the flotilla raised some awareness but failed to bring things, and nothing seems to stop Israel committing its genocide. No government is doing anything. It feels, I mean, the situation in Sudan is horrific. I'm just very, very distressed by all of this.
Thanks for sharing that. And there's another point from Matt. Matt, did you want to speak on this around the question of international cooperation?
So one thing sorry, Matt, are you coming in?
Yeah, sorry, I was just having tech troubles. Sorry, Hannah. Yeah, so lovely to see you, by the way, and know that you're safe. Yeah, so I was really impressed with like the levels of international cooperation for the flotilla. You know, like you said, it was just ordinary people, right? And it was just incredible. But especially thinking about, you know, what the Italian dock workers did. Do you think that can be taken to like an even higher level for a next flotilla, and get, you know, coordinated actions, coordinated strikes across many countries? You know, is that something that potentially could help to build the pressure on Israel?
Any thoughts on that, Hannah?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say that happened that kind of was highlighted because we're part of the Colombian delegation, but also so the Colombian president has been was talking in the UN about getting an international like an international not a peacekeeping force, but yes, a peacekeeping force, but an international collaboration going in favor of humanity rather than in favor of the genocidal destructive power that is currently running the world, if you like. And he made a fabulous speech in the UN just before the Americans took his visa off him. Where he you know, he linked up you know, the violence that's been done to the environment with the violence that's been done to the Palestinian people and to the people in Sudan and to people in Yemen, and he made the point that, you know, if we don't stand up and do something about Palestine, then Palestine will be everywhere, you know. So I think you know, the chances of getting the UK government to join in something like that at the moment are slim. But you know, there's a lot of people in the UK, like there's a lot of people in the United States who like absolutely oppose what their governments are doing. And then it's up to us to try and work out ways of changing things. So yeah, I'm going to stop there because
Yeah,
I've
definitely.
hogged the microphone for a long time. But,
So,
yeah.
so I can see 3 people with their hands up, so we're sure we've definitely got time to do. So
Yeah,
let's start
go
with
for it.
Alan, and then
Yeah.
Tracy and Gio.
I think basically I'd like to try to answer that question that the person raised about feeling demoralized about the situation. The fact of the matter is, Israel has created a situation where it is now a total international pariah. It's only by the mass media in these various countries flattening out any discussion of it that stops them from being uprisings in these countries. And yet, still, after 32 demonstrations by the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, 600,000 people turned out at the last demonstration. That is absolutely amazing. It's gone on for so long. I mean, basically, I don't think people should be optimistic about what we're doing, but despite the appalling situation that's happening to the people of Gaza. And Hannah, I'd like to thank Hannah for that really, really interesting contribution. I didn't expect to hear anything quite so clear as all that. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Let's go to Tracy and then Gio, and then come back to Hannah.
Hello, you gorgeous woman, and all the other faces I recognise. So I get seasick on a paddle, so there's no way I'm getting on a boat. And I was trying to support you online, and though I had some information coming in, I wasn't quite sure what it was okay for me to put out, what was personal. So I think it would be handy to have a bit more clarity around that. And I don't mean to be rude to people, but we are all Gorpers, and I watched, there was definitely increased engagement when you were getting closer, and we're all watching it online. Some of them were getting up to like 1 million people watching online. And I don't know if it's technically possible, but if you could interact. So Novara Media had some people on, if they were talking to the people on the boats, that, you know, like when we're sitting on motorways, everybody's like, oh, you can't do that. People are getting angry, but people actually want a front row seat to watch all the drama. Yeah, and just some clarity about what we can share to just raise it, because you're so brave, but I couldn't do that.
Thank you. Gio, and then I'll come back to Hannah to respond on that.
Yeah, hi, Hannah. Just a quickie. When you came through the airport, you came through on crutches. How's your injury doing? And also, you know, you've done so much and you've spent this evening with us. Is there anything we can do for you? Did your fundraiser reach its limit? Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Gio. Yeah, so I'll do my best to answer all those things. Yeah, my fundraiser's pretty much reached its limit, and I think people have been really generous, and I kind of feel like there's so much work to be done out there that like yeah, I've got enough in my fundraiser to be able to feel like I can recover and not have to panic, because I work seasonally, so I kind of missed the end of my season of work, and then I'm self-employed, so my knee is allowing me to work not quite as freely as I would normally, but it is a lot better than it was. So it's hit a bit of an impasse at the moment, so it's not getting better as quick as it was. But I'm sure I'll get it back to full working order fairly soon. So yeah, in terms of what can you share, so it's funny, like I wasn't very good, you know, because I saw like Carlos and especially Lorenzo. I mean, they were there, that was their job. Like my job was to sail the boat, and their job was to report on how we were getting on, and you know, to engage with people about why we were there and all that kind of thing. And it's not you know, I'm doing this talk now, but it's not really my happy place talking to people about stuff, you know. And like I say, you know, like I'm kind of aware of you know, like politics is, it's not my forte, but you know, social justice and yeah, taking action against the destructive forces of the world kind of is my happy place. So I'm happier doing things than talking about them. But I think you know, I think there was a lot of interaction, and there was a lot of I always waved at the camera. When I saw the camera, I always waved at it, but then somebody moved it so it was behind me when I was steering. So then, like, I forgot it was there, to be honest. But yeah, I take the point about you know, getting people to tune in. But it's not people tuning in we need. It's people like feeling moved to get out the, you know, to get out the house and on the street kind of thing, or whatever that's needed. Or yeah, even just on the phone to the Foreign Office or the MP or whoever. Do you know what I mean? Whatever action, or just making a bit of artwork, or you know, phoning up your radio phone in, and do you know what I mean? Just anything to kind of move things along, help move things along, I think is a good thing. And yeah, personally, Tracy, I would just, if I've put it out there, then I think it's good to share it. Do you know what I mean? That's what I would say. It's fair game. So I could have shared a lot of other stuff that I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Because yeah,
I
less
think
said about. I'm not going to go into that any more detail there. That yeah. Go on.
Sorry, just to stop you there, Hannah, because I think we've nearly run out of time, but I can see Ruth's got a hand up, so we could take one more question and then before we finish.
Hiya. It was just to share a little bit more about the Uniting for Peace. So I know what I've heard, having been on some webinars, is that Petro has he's drafted it, but what's happening now is that Trump, UK, France, they're trying to create their own version of it. So they're trying to bring that forward to the Security Council and basically beat Pedro to the table with that. So he had got some support, I know, from Indonesia for one country, but what I've heard is that Indonesia might be switching sides now. So there's clearly a lot of things going on in the background because it's a 2/3 support that's needed. There's no vetoes. It would be an emergency session that gets called within like 24 hours. But I think what he's trying to do is get the behind the scenes support before he actually brings that to the table. And obviously things are constantly shifting all the time. So I've dropped a few links in the chat for ways to people to show support. Some of them might be emails, some of them might be petitions. But if you know people globally, I think it's really good for citizens to put pressure on the governments to get behind this rather than the Trump plan. So yeah, just wanted to share. And I dropped a link for, there was a webinar, there was a big meeting about it yesterday. Craig Monkiber, I think is his name. He's a human rights lawyer. He was also in the Gaza tribunals. He's been doing a lot of work for that as well, so you can look him up through that. And then besides that, I think just a lot of BDS work. I know Francesca Albanese has said that's really a really potent way to do things. So, like Black Friday is coming up, you can organize locally, go and target some complicit companies and brands and go and disrupt on Black Friday, for example. So yeah, things like that.
Great, thanks, Ruth. So Hannah, any last points before we finish up?
Yeah, I think what Ruth just said there about Trump trying to head President Petrov goes to show that he's on the right track. So if he doesn't make it this time, like I thought that the whole ceasefire stuff was all rushed in partly because of the swell in global action, and I think things like calling for Israel to be chucked out of the football and chucked out of Eurovision and things, might appear to be quite small, say compared to stopping a shipment of arms. But I think it really hits their psyche, if you know what I mean, because I think the Israeli people that I saw, they actually don't think they're doing anything wrong, and they're kind of absolutely think they're right. So then if the world sort of throws them out of stuff, then I think that will have quite a big effect, maybe, on getting people to listen. So BDS stuff, keep going at it, but I think everything helps. But like my one of the big things that came up for me through the flotilla was and I think this is a good place to finish, really, was we're so fucking sorry for swearing, we're so arrogant in the West that we think that we're going to save the world, us activists in the West, because we're so used to it being the European and the North American countries that like run the world. Then we think it's down to the activists in those countries to make a difference. But one of the beautiful things about meeting the two young women from Colombia on my boat and getting to know them a bit, like one of them was saying to me, when she grew up, her parents grew up, they grew up in like in a poor barrio in Colombia, and she said they couldn't read and write, and all they knew was what was around them and what they heard from their neighbors and stuff. And now she said, like, the kids, they might not be able to read and write, but they've all got smartphones, so they know what's happening in the world. Do you know what I mean? And they're able to organize. And so, thinking that like it's down to the people in the West to save the world is just another Western piece of arrogance. And actually, there's a lot more people in the global South than there is here. And like my hope is that they're going to come and save us once they've saved themselves, hopefully. So yeah, I'd just like to finish on that hopeful note.
Thanks.
And like seeing President Petro making a speech, is like, yeah, rock on.
Thanks so much, Hannah. And
Colombia. Sorry, I'll stop now.
I think one of the things that really came across to me, particularly seeing the strikes in Italy and Greece and so on, is actually as well that the world is divided between ordinary people who know what side they're on. They're against the side of genocide. They're against the arms companies. They're against people being massacred, and we need that's the power that we need to leverage to change things. And that was one of the inspiring things about the flotilla, is that yes, it was a group of people doing an extraordinary thing, but they actually showed a lot of people that they could take action themselves, and it became an inspiration for much wider forms of action. So again, thank you very much for sharing your experience with us, and thank you to everyone for coming. And we hope that people will be inspired to take more action in future. Thanks again to everyone.